welcome back to another video and to this guitar. So this is a Highway 1 Fender Stratocaster, and Highway 1 was basically one of the older models of having a more affordable sort of made in USA Fender. It ran from around 2002 is about the earliest you'll find, right up to about 2010, and this one is a 2008 model. Now, throughout that time, there were two sort of versions of this guitar, and they are both very, very different. And if, like me, you actually prefer the smaller headstock, you might be inclined to go, oh, I'll just get an earlier one then, because the earlier ones had a smaller headstock. But there are several massive differences between them, so I thought it'd be useful in this video, seeing as though we've got one of the later ones, to sort of go over those differences and simplify, you know, what those old models were. So the first one that came out, you had the HSS version, which had the big headstock, and you had this version, the free single coil version, which had the smaller headstock. But they also had vintage style, sort of vintage narrow frets. The pickups were Alnico 2, so a bit more sort of accurate 60s style pickups, you could say. The finish, and this is a big one, was a thin acrylic, and then they changed that to what this is, which is nitrocellulose. So if you prefer a nitro finish over a thin hard acrylic, despite the headstock difference, that might be something that changes your mind, sort of thing. And then some other little differences as well. So if I give you a peek in that hole there, you'll see that that's a steel trem block. And on the earlier ones, it was the more, familiar Mexican zinc alloy trem. And the wiring was different as well. In the newer one, you got the grease bucket tone controls. All that basically was Fender's way of doing sort of like a treble bleed sort of thing, and it works very, very well with a lot of drive. You've got some extra capacitors in there, some ceramic disc capacitors on the tone control that just they don't kind of make a more muffled kind of sound like that as you roll the tone off, particularly with gain. So again, that came on these later ones. And the other thing that these later ones have that alongside that nitro finish is well worth knowing about is the fret wire. So these had full jumbo frets as opposed to the original's vintage narrows. So, although they're both called Highway 1, they are both very, very, very different, different Fender Stratocasters. So, if like me, you do prefer the smaller headstock, but actually this is a much more suitable to you guitar, you like the nitro, you prefer the bigger frets like I do, then actually this is the better guitar for you. So with all that said, hopefully that sort of rounds up, the differences and what it was. It was replaced with the American Special, I think, which has now been replaced by the Performer. So you're in that entry level made in USA price tag sort of thing. But these guitars are, they're well worth seeking out, and I will link this one down below. But let's get on to some sounds. So there you go, you heard a little bit about how this thing sounds. Hopefully that came across okay. So we've been over the sort of, the paper specs and differences, but what does this thing actually, what does it actually feel like to play? So if I can bring you in a bit closer to have a look at this finish, you can see how it's reflecting that it's not a completely kind of satin matte finish, but it does have this sort of dulled off, softened kind of feel to it. And I'll just show you the back there as well, maybe it'll come across better. And it does just feel really, really nice and unique. It feels different to my own nitro finish Strat. It's a different kind of feeling, and whenever you read, generally, especially from Fender and Gibson and stuff like that, nitro finish, don't just assume that that's the same as, like, back in the day, the 60s, because technology's changed. Nitro nowadays has, it has more elasticizers in it and stuff to stop it from checking in the cold and things like that. And you can tell that in the little dinks this thing has. It's more sort of pliable. So rather than checking and splitting, you just have these sort of soft ripples and rivets through it. And don't forget, this guitar is 14 years old, so it has had, it's had some age to it. But when you're holding it and playing it, it just feels more, I don't know, more money's worth, I suppose. It feels a bit more special. And the other sort of major highlight on this guitar is the neck. So if I can sort of try and catch the light, you can see that it is a gloss finish, but it's one of them glosses where it's shiny but slidey. It doesn't ever get sort of super sticky. And I'm the sort of person where I tend to sweat quite a lot, and if a guitar neck is sticky, believe me, I'll figure it out in about 2 minutes flat, sort of thing. And the other thing is, like, with Fender, it's real hard in a way to sort of justify how you can get a 300 quid Squire right the way up to a £4,000 custom shop, because these guitars, they are simple guitars. They're not like artisan made, like a PRS or a Les Paul or something that requires a lot more hard work and arguably skill to sort of create. There's a lot more room for improvement, shall we say, in those guitars. Whereas the Fender stuff, right from its very inception, was supposed to be a simple, easy guitar. And so, having played now, by this point, dozens of everything, right from Squire to Masterbuilt to real vintage guitars, it's always been the one sort of, it's why I built my own custom shop instead of, lusting after and trying to figure out how I could afford a multiple £1,000 one, because it's just harder to justify. But one of the areas you can definitely feel it as you go up the Fender ladder, so to speak, is in the feel of the neck. And anyone who watched my custom shop Strat review that I did with Steve, I said the same thing on that video. There's something in the way that the necks feel, the higher up that ladder you go, that just has, you can tell it's more refined, it's been better sanded, it's had more thought put into the carve. And that is very much so the case here. It feels like a more refined neck than, say, just a normal Player Series Strat. And combined with these medium jumbo frets, or jumbo frets I should say, and that lovely dark rosewood board, it just ties the whole thing together into feeling, like I said at the start, it is one of the sleeper sort of Fenders, I think. I think you really ought to, try and seek one of these out to try it if you're in the market for a Strat. And this one is for sale, so I will link it down below. But yeah, that's it really. So would you get one? Have you got one? What do you think of them? Let me know down below. And that's it for this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.